All right. That's your customized intro.
Oh, nice, nice. You spelled my name right. I didn't get my name spelled
Oh, I
correctly when I
thought you were.
graduated from college, so you got me.
Man, I knew you were going to say wrong. I just knew it when you started talking because I'm bad about spelling names incorrectly. So
Thank goodness for spell check.
well, I actually go. I went to look at your, Twitter uh, page, which is one thing I wanted to do when we get started. But first, I wanted to say thanks for coming on, and obviously, you're Dan Warren for those people who don't know. and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sort of giving a little bit of a background on yourself, um, because I know you're an engineer, but I don't really. But this is one of the reasons I wanted to interview you because I don't know you very well, and I wanted to get to know you better. So, if you don't mind giving a little bit of a background.
Okay, well, I'm a 43-year-old father of two. I blame the Transformers for my interest in engineering as well as the extraterrestrial hypothesis because they represent both things. I spent so many hours as a kid folding and unfolding Transformers. I feel like that triggered my mechanical inclination to figure things out like that. But it also made me start thinking about some of the bigger questions, like what if there were things that came from another planet to Earth? So my interest in this UFO topic stems back to my childhood at a small level. And then throughout my life, like a lot of people, I kind of got deep into it and then I would back out of it mainly because of stigma associated with it, not wanting people to know that I was interested in the topic. But throughout my life, like you said, I've led a very normal, very mundane life, I'll call it, where I went to college, got a degree in mechanical engineering, went out west, worked for Caterpillar, ended up coming back to Tennessee, which I'm a Tennessee resident as well, just like you. I actually have a brother that lives probably 20 minutes from Chattanooga, so he's close by.
Is that south, north, or east or west?
He's actually just across the state line in Ringgold, so he's
Oh man,
just
that's
a
not
little
even
bit
that
south.
far. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's close.
he's a Civil War aficionado now that he's moved down there because he likes to go investigate the battlefields, and he's our family historian, so this is right up his alley.
Oh man, there's a great museum down there at the Chickamauga battlefield. Is it Fulmer? What is it? What's the gun? It's
I couldn't tell you,
Fuller
but
Fuller gun collection, or it was a guy who had like 300 or 400. I mean, it's a museum full of guns, and he donated them to the for a museum to the Chickamauga battlefield. And there, it's awesome. I have a video on it. It's pretty awesome.
well, he took us down to the battlefield last time we were down there for Father's Day, and we ended up going on the big stone tower, which I'm a huge fan of ancient architecture,
Yeah,
primarily megaliths. So it was the closest thing to a megalith in Tennessee. It's huge stone stacked up high. You can go up and
I've
it's
been
an
in there.
observation tower. It's great. It's
It's
haunted from what
awesome.
I've been told, but I didn't see anything, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah. Uh, it's funny you bring that up about haunting. I think anyway, we can talk about that some more. Because it kind of brings up Skinwalker Ranch and that kind of stuff. But I know you and I are here to talk about crypto terrestrials and or ultra terrestrials. And I'm looking at the comments here. Kurt M says, "Hey." Daniel Boone says, "Thumbs up."
Thank you guys.
Daniel's watching from Australia. Cool. Good day, mate.
I know. I was going to say it if you weren't going to say it.
Sorry you don't live in Oregon. I actually designed a house for a guy in Oregon, and he almost had me come out and build it for him, but I couldn't come at the time. I'm off next year, though, people. If you want me to come to Idaho, another guy's wanting me to come to Idaho. It's kind of funny. But anyway, enough about me. This is about you, Dan. I've always been intrigued with engineering. I wanted to be a design build contractor. I mean, even when I was like a little kid, right? I loved building things and designing things. And I did work in architecture about 7 years out of my 44 years in construction. In the industry, 44 years total. 7 of that was I spent trying to be trained in architecture, so I could design and build, custom homes.
Well, I hope it didn't ruin you, is what I'll say.
I don't know. Actually, it was I still treasure those years because some of the people that were my mentors were like structural engineers. Bill Kinnaman, I know you don't know him. He's like a 90-year-old guy who he still helps me out with structural things. He's just got the wit, and a lot of the engineers I know they have a very dry sense of humor. You have to get to know them. They're kind of guarded, they're really smart people, And one of the things I like doing, I mean, this is kind of a selfish series, this PiFi series I've got going. People I find interesting. I'm really almost more interested in the people than I am, like UAPs or whatever the subject we're talking about, because I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of engineers, and I wondered if you knew. Do you know the Oliver Rhodes and Associates? Any of those guys?
I can't say I'm familiar with them now.
Okay, that was a stab in the dark because they're MEP engineers in Middle Tennessee, and I got to work with them a lot when I was a project manager for an architecture firm.
So this is one thing. I've worked in Ohio for a while, and I think it's a geographical difference between there and here, but some places they call them MP&Es and some places they call them MEPs. So it's just a slight difference, and it threw me off when I started hearing them say it the wrong way.
Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. I guess we say MEPs. I don't know why we do that in the South or here. I don't know. Of course, it obviously doesn't matter, but
we just lost about 99% of the audience on that conversation, I'd say.
But some of my good friends are mechanical, structural, electrical engineers, and I just think they're fascinating. I got to work on the coolest thing is that I got to work on a data center for Williams-Sonoma in San Francisco, and it was like a party in San Francisco because we had IBM as consultants, and they ended up doing most of the work, and we all just kind of, had fun doing sightseeing, and we were there for a week. But anyway, they're smart guys, and so I was interested, I guess, coming around full circle. When I saw that you were an engineer, I thought that's pretty awesome because you're actually putting yourself out there. People in the professional. Now, people are going to take this the wrong way, right? They're going to think it's a smug comment, but people in the professional world really are putting themselves out there on this kind of stuff, because in that industry, we're expected to be very scientific, very
not nuts and bolts. I mean,
yeah, very scientific, where there's not a lot of room for speculation, or you know what I mean. It's all math,
just the facts,
physics, and what is it going to take? You're a mechanical engineer, right?
Correct.
So it's how many tons of air conditioning is it going to take to provide conditioning for this building? It's all, like you said, it's numbers. But the thing is, I've actually taken a pretty decent amount of ribbing over this. To be honest, I don't know if you have. That was one question I had for you. In your professional life, have you taken, or do people so I use my YouTube channel. Like I actually do videos for my customers for different things like drawings. Like when I design their house, I'll make a video. I don't know if you've seen any on my YouTube channel. I probably have 500 or 600 of them. So my customers are going to my YouTube channel, right? And sometimes the stigma is really strong, because sometimes I'm wondering, should I really be putting this UAP content here because of my business? And I was wondering if you've run into any of that or had any thoughts like that.
Most of my content is on TikTok and Twitter, and no one I work with is in that community. That's one of the things that I appreciate about the UAP community or UFO community is it is small and it's a close-knit group, but it is welcoming to an extent. Like, we do want people to get involved. It's it can be rough to learn how to navigate that. But overall, you're going to find a group of guys that are looking to get some answers to some of the biggest questions in life. And that's one commonality that I think that is throughout the UFO community, regardless of where you are. We all want answers. We're all trying to figure out what this is. We're all going about it different ways, but no one that I work with knows that I make any videos about UFOs or UAPs, anything like that. A couple of my wife's friends that work at the campus with me do know that I make them, and they follow me and watch my videos and are more impressed with my success than my wife is, which isn't shocking to anybody, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'm talking obviously. Well, I say obviously. I agree with the community is very open, but the ribbing that I have taken is from people outside the community. They're like, oh, were you abducted last? They'll just rib me. It's a poking the bear kind of thing.
Again with the probing jokes. Okay, I got it.
Poking the bear, probing the bear. But no, I'm always curious about that. And I don't mean to segregate. I don't mean to say that special, professional people or anything special. I just mean that if you're in the industries like we are, that it's very, when you're at work, it's serious.
Yeah.
It's serious work. There's a lot at stake. There's, and it's just a different atmosphere than.
Well, it's also, in my opinion, you can't kind of sort of talk about UFOs. If you start talking about them, it's like, all right, well, I'm proficient in my knowledge base on this topic, so I got to explain it to you in great detail and excruciating depth to get you to understand why this is fascinating to me. Because the response that I think most of us get when someone that it doesn't have any knowledge of this subject gives us is, you don't really believe that, do you? Like, that's a response that I've gotten from some people outside of my professional settings. But that's also why I just don't bring it up in conversations, because it's just so much to try to, hey, let me tell you just a little bit about this subject without sounding crazy. Like, until you start saying, well, here's why I think there's some validity to the accounts that have been discussed, why I think these hypotheses are valid in some way, shape, or form, and why this is such an enthralling subject for me to be fascinated with.
And part of the problem is that it requires such lengthy explanation, or there's so much history behind it. What are you going to do? Say, oh, in 1947 there was these. You can't spend a few minutes on this subject.
So I started going to a chiropractor, and I told him I was interested in UFOs, and we started having these little conversations while I was getting my adjustments. And I noticed that as I continued to talk to him about it, I kept having to back up. All right, let me explain this to you. All right, I got to explain this and why it's significant. And so that was one of the catalysts for me wanting to start making the videos in the format that I do. It's because I don't have time. People don't have an hour to sit down and hear a podcast about one particular case or subject associated with this topic. But I can give you 3 minutes of a ton of information in a short, quick burst that if you find it interesting, it's also going to have enough information in that video for you to search on your own further. And that's another thing that I always tell people is no one is going to convince you that UFOs are real. You need to learn for yourself about what evidence exists, what theories and hypotheses are out there, and do the work on yourself, for yourself, think for yourself, to be able to better understand what's going on. No one can spoon feed you this topic.
Yeah. And that's I haven't really thought about that angle, but that's true. And you will come to a point, you'll kind of go through phases. Like if you're as old as I am and you've been interested in this subject as long as I have, since I was 12 or 13, because I had, had my own little experience then. I still haven't figured it out. So I don't claim to be an experiencer, right? I don't. I'm just saying that made me start looking at it and start asking questions, and you know, and so, and I think I was talking with Dan Rather about this. Dan Rather. Oh my goodness. Sorry, Rather.
I gotta follow Dan Rather. Oh my goodness.
I
This
got
is a
Dan
tough,
here
tall
and
order.
Dan today and Rather last on Saturday. Rather and I were talking about this, how um, now I lost my train of thought because I made a mistake.
I'm thinking about the news now.
But it but anyway, what I wanted to do was to kind of kick off the subject that we were going to talk about, was play your short, I guess it's a TikTok video on Twitter, if that's okay. The one about the ultra terrestrials. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
that's definitely awkward, but I'm used to it by now. It's happened on more than one podcast, so let's do it.
Well, it's not very long, is it?
I've got one. It's 7.5 minutes long. It's
Oh,
actually
wait a
3
minute.
that I
Okay.
stitched together.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know what I thought? I thought it was like a short format because.
Well, there's 3 videos. Maybe we play one, talk about it, and then we could play the other
Well,
one.
we don't have to do that. I was just going to want to kind of feature your channel a little bit, but people know where to find you. Maybe you can just give a short. And you're right, that's too long. 7 minutes is, I think, too long. But people will just be bored. I mean, they'd much rather go to your channel and watch it, right?
Yeah.
But if you can kind of give a short sort of synopsis or intro on the, I guess that video was on Ultra, or
It
help me
blurred the
distinguish.
line.
Help me distinguish between the crypto terrestrials, are the ones apparently that were here, or the theory is that they were here before us, right? And Ultra is off world, or
So an ultra is a potential of multiple different origins for what we're experiencing that are now terrestrial in nature. So just to give you the full story, the video series that I made is based on the paper that Hal Puthoff put out. It was rumored to exist for years, and then it was released to the public on a website called the Journal of Cosmology about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. So it was the first time that the general public had ever actually seen this particular paper. And for this is where another situation where I'm like, and I'm going to back up. If you don't know who Hal Puthoff is, he's been involved with some very unique projects associated with the government dating back to the 70s. And he was also a founding member of To the Stars Academy, back when Lou and Chris Mellon got on the stage and kind of shocked the world. In my opinion, I was watching at the time. So he's a big wheel at the Cracker Factory as far as the paranormal subject goes. So this paper came out, and it's called I think it's called Exploring UAPs, and it focuses on ultra-terrestrials. So he goes into detail about, here's what my 2 topics that I want to broach in this paper are that there is a UAP presence. There is something that's non-human interacting with humanity, a non-human intelligence on Earth interacting with humanity. And then 2 is it could be a lot of things. We don't know exactly what it is, or it could be a combination of those things, or it could be multiple of those things. So there's a broad range of possible origins for what is interacting with humanity. So the paper then goes on to detail some different flaws that our current approach to investigating UFOs has associated with it, including everybody basically focusing on it's extraterrestrials. Don't look at anything else. We already know it's extraterrestrials. They're coming from outer space to Earth, or that it's just a psychological problem and people are all just seeing things and having group hallucinations, mass hallucinations. And those are the 2 primary focuses of the community. And until we start to open our aperture and look at the broader possibilities and not just focus on the 2 that we think are the most likely, then we're going to miss a large part of the picture. And what I described in that video is until we start looking for patterns of the overall phenomenon, we're not going to be able to see the forest for the trees. We're just going to be focusing on, is that a birch tree? Is that a dogwood tree? But we're not going to see the whole forest.
He thinks that the two main focuses are what I consider like off-world, or that it's just, you know,
in our heads.
Okay, I was trying to think of a nice way to, which I find surprising, because I would think from my little studies over the past many years, I think there's a pretty decent amount of thinking that it could be that they could have been here all along.
So I'll ask you this question in response to that. Who are you referring to when you talk about that? Are those people that have been digging into the subject for years, or is this the general public?
Well, this is where we're going to have a little bit of a debate, because I don't think there are any experts in this field.
So, I agree with you there.
Yeah. So it's just like Hal Puthoff. What is he basing it? What is he basing? A lot of these so-called experts will make statements, but they never give us an explanation or show any evidence, right?
I agree with that. It's like, and that's where.
But they're making statements as if it's just assumed, like it's almost like a fact, right? Oh, here's the way it is. It's like I think I made Lou mad at me when I said no, we haven't had disclosure. You know, he came out, you know, when he did and said, well, we've already had disclosure, and I was like, oh, really? When was that? You know, and because I don't think we have. You know, I think disclosure is going to be like when they rolled out the stealth bomber. Remember on the tarmac, and you know, it was a big production, and here's the stealth bomber, and I was thinking, wow, that's, because I remember that it was vividly. To this day, I was like, awesome, because when I was a kid, you know, it was very science fiction-y to talk about flying wings and, you know, that kind of stuff, and so that was disclosure to me of current military technology. I don't feel like if we've had disclosure, and I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but I'm good at that, so I guess sorry, but I guess what I'm getting at is that people are using terms that have meanings, right? Like disclosure, and making those statements about what they are, and we just don't know. You know, there's no
So I think that when Lou talks about disclosure, he thinks of it as, hey, the government has disclosed that there's something there. There's just something there. I think
we know there's something there.
Yeah, well, that's what I think he's referring to as disclosure. But what I think you and I refer to as disclosure is disclosure that the public will accept. People aren't going to accept Lou saying, hey, this is what it is. We're looking for the president to make an announcement. Hey, this is an intelligence that's interacting with humanity. And that, to me, is the disclosure moment.
No, I really think, and I love Lou, okay? I do love him to death. But I really think he and others are trying to make us believe that we've had disclosure, right? So that maybe we'll calm down a little bit. Maybe we need to go to sleep again. I was talking with Rather about this, where I have, you know, been through these phases of, it seems like every 10 years or so since I was a teenager, 70s, the 80s, the 90s, there's always this point of excitement, and then it's like, you know, go back to sleep, you know, and then something else will happen, and then 2017 is the most recent, right? You know, we've had congressional hearings before, in the 70s or whatever.
50 plus years ago. I can't remember exactly when that would have been.
I think I found my old UFO magazines where the headlines are basically almost the same as they are today, right? I meant to go dig it out, but I moved into this tiny house until I could build my next little cabin, and so everything's in storage. But the point I'm trying to make there is that I think words mean, I think I'm not saying that Lou's trying to be do some sort of intelligence, counterintelligence work or whatever, or spread propaganda. But then okay, so that happens, right? And then just recently, now the thing is, oh well, we're in the middle of disclosure. I don't know if you've seen that.
Disclosure is a process, not an event. Is
yeah,
what it's been.
And I was like, well,
repeated.
are you talking? What is the middle? Did it start in 1950 or 60, or does that mean if we're in the middle now and it started in 1950 or 60, does that mean it's going to be the year 2080 when we have, you know what I mean? It's almost like the point is to create this vague, this ambiguity. And I ran across something kind of funny today, and it was Eric Weinstein talking about what's the term? Kayfabe. What is it called in wrestling? Kayfabe. It's in wrestling. I know this. You're like,
I haven't watched wrestling since college. I'll admit it, and that was a while back.
On what? Watched what?
I haven't watched wrestling since college, so that's
well.
Been about
I haven't watched it. I never watched it at all. I honestly, I never really got into it. But this was Eric Weinstein. He's the one. He brought it up. He was on a podcast and he was talking about this term kayfabe, and what it is it's sort of the ruse that the wrestling industry came up with back in the day. This was, 30, 40 years ago, where wrestling used to be like actual wrestling, right? Well, then they realized to make an industry out of it, they had to make it more of a, if they're going to go on tours and do things that all these people have to sort of live together and act together. And they came up with this sort of term that meant, how can I do this really in a quick manner? It meant that they were going to, it's basically scripted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's all these, stories intertwined and, and so, and then they have these terms for when, I'm not explaining this very well, but sometimes people will break that sort of fourth wall, right? I guess it made me think of the whole UFO thing, where we're being told it's sort of like in wrestling, where we're supposed to have a storyline that we believe, right? And the truth in these wrestling fights, I know people are saying, "Spit it out, Tony, spit it out." In these wrestling fights, sometimes somebody will accidentally hit someone, right?
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden it becomes kind of a real fight, right? But then it's still supposed to be scripted, right?
Predetermined outcome.
Predetermined outcome. There's always, they're talking about each other's, girlfriends and whatever, and it just occurred to me, it was like a little light bulb went off in my head. It's like the UFO thing is kind of the same way, because you've got groups of people who are telling us what we're supposed to believe, right? You don't feel that way, that in a way that certain people are saying, here's the script, this is what you're supposed to believe, and then people will just kind of fall in line with that.
I don't know which specific group you're referring to. Are you talking about like the
well, there are people,
the Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellons of the world, or are you talking about the Nick Wests of the world? So there's a broad range, broad spectrum.
The people who are bringing the message about, the people who are bringing, anyone who is in a position of authority or not authority but influence, like Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Tom DeLonge, Jeremy Corbell, all of the people who are I'm not going to say the actors, the players right now, right?
Uh-huh.
They're bringing us a story, right? And we're supposed to believe it without any evidence. Every day I remind myself that we have all these people telling us these things, but none of them have brought anything to the table that would convince me. You know, the funny thing is, I still think they exist. I'm just tired of people telling me they exist. I'm tired of hearing their story or their version, just like how put off. I want them, if they're going to convince me that their version is real and mine is not real, like I said earlier, I think they've always been here, then I want them to convince me. I don't want them to just tell me and expect me to believe it.
Yeah.
So,
So
when
you,
I hear somebody tell me that we've had disclosure, you see, it's a long story with me, right? It's like trying to talk to some of your customers about it. You can't just do it in 3 minutes.
yeah.
It's a long discussion, and so with people my age who've had this history of this for many years, and you watched Linda Moulton Howe come along, and all these other people, the old timers, um, come along in their industry, I don't know.
So you got to quote Eric Weinstein, so I'm going to quote him as well.
Okay.
He put a tweet out a few weeks ago that basically had talked about he has been approached by enough people to where although he's not convinced by any direct evidence, it's the overwhelming amount of indirect evidence that has swayed him to take this topic seriously and investigate it further, and to basically stop ridiculing it and get on board with it. And that's the best explanation I have heard for why I am a enthusiast for this topic, because all of the witness testimony, all of the guys that are putting their necks out there, I'm putting my neck out there for my little personal career just to talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that have put a lot more on the line, many folds more than I have, to just have this discussion. Like Steve Justice is one dude to me that really jumps out, that he was willing to stand on the stage with Tom DeLonge and talk about all this after he was the lead of Lockheed Skunk Works. Now, you can't tell me that guy hasn't seen something that is convincing enough for him to risk his entire reputation that he's been working on for decades as the top of the top when it comes to engineering, to convince him that it's worthwhile to stick his neck out there. So those are the guys that I look at and I'm like, I gotta believe they're onto something. I don't know what they've seen. I personally, Dan, haven't seen anything that I'm like, without a doubt, that is not of human origin. But it's the countless Richard Dolan's 3 novels worth of pilot, Air Force, military testimony.
You see, you don't have to convince me. I think there are beings out there. I just don't know what they are. But see, I'm saying that I'm not making a claim.
Yeah.
Even though I saw an orb or whatever when I was 12, 13, I'm not making any claims as to knowing what they are. Right. That's the only thing that bothers me, is that there are R&R just mentioned Toe down here, and I really enjoyed interviewing Kurt John Mungle, because as smart as he is, he's not making any claims of, right. He's pure science, pure math, pure physics, whatever, and I think that's the way everybody should be on this subject, right? Because like I said before, I don't think there are any experts. I honestly think that I think there is something to this. I think there probably are beings on some, I honestly think that we humans just don't have the machinery, the hardware to be able to have awareness of them, right? And we may have even been created that way. We may have been created with the ability, without the ability to comprehend or know or see them or understand them, right?
Correct.
I think that's
it's an option.
Yeah, I think that's more reasonable than anything I've heard, and that's why I think that way.
So I'm also a believer that we don't know what this actually is, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
conflicting information because there's people that say, "Oh, we have intact craft that we've reverse engineered and we understand it perfectly." I lean towards. You're familiar with James McDonald from I think back in the 50s and 60s. He was a gentleman that studied. I think he was a astronomer. I want to say, but I listened to a interview that he gave back in I think the early 60s, and you could play that interview today and it would still hold true. He basically says we don't know what they are. They're intruding in our airspace. We can't stop them, and it doesn't sound to me like we've made any progress in understanding what the phenomenon is since the 60s. So if they don't know, they have all the resources. I surely am not going to figure this out on my own. So I think we're in a long investigation process to try to figure this out.
Oh yeah, and see, I think that should be the attitude. I don't think that we should be being told that we've had disclosure. I think we should be they should be saying exactly what you just said. Not that, hey guys, it's real. If you can't say it's real and not know what it is at the same time. To me, there's no logic there.
I think you could say that though. I think if I said I don't know what I've seen an animal, it's covered in
No,
hair, it walks
if
on
you're
four
no, but
legs.
they're that's easy. That's different though, right? But they're inferring, like not knowing what it is. It could be our own tech, right? Our government goes so deep, and the black budgets are so huge. What was the last piece of machinery you saw that was? And the reason I brought out the B-1 bomber being rolled out from the hangar back in the eight was 80 something. When is the last time they did that? It's been a long time, and they've been doing stuff. They've been working. They've had engineers like you working all this time, right? The
Oh
the
yeah.
doc, the black budgets are pretty deep, and there's no telling how much money they've spent off the record.
So
You know,
that's one of the things that I get irritated by with the whole congressional hearing thing is they'll say we don't think it's our own technology. Of course, you're never going to
you're never
admit
gonna
that it
know.
is. Like, you never. That's
and if,
never
and
going to
if,
be an acceptable
and
answer.
if there's anything that Lou knows, it's that he that's probably some of the secrets that he's holding. I'm going to say, and
Which
Chris Mellon, you know,
that would possibly be one of the reasons why they would have redacted the shapes from the preliminary assessment on UAPs that John Greenwald got released the full version, or what I think is the full version, or what they claim is the full version of it.
yeah. In some ways, the thing about it is this could be a very deep counter intel or sort of, this could be. I mean, you have to, if you're an objective person, you have to go down the list, right? It could be this, it could be that, it could be this. If you're just like, if you're just like a no, I only believe one thing, I think you're going to be disappointed someday. But one of the things on my list is that this is uh, an intelligence operation to, again, it's just one thing. It's just one thing on the list, people. Don't get mad at me. That it's an intelligence operation to expose our technology indirectly to people like China and Russia to say, you know, don't don't be starting any world wars because we have this hardware that will wear you out if you know and that's probably a long shot, but you have to leave until somebody tells me and shows me exactly what it is. I'm going to have that as one thing on my list, right? Because that's what Lou Elizondo is an expert at. That is his expertise. Okay,
So
and so
you stated that the definitions have meaning to them. So
yeah,
let's talk definitions real quick, because
don't use them against me though.
when I hear counterintelligence, to me that says knowing what your enemies know about you. When I hear disinformation, I feel like that's what a lot of people think of when they hear counterintelligence. Do you think that
I
there's
don't
a
like
difference between
using
the
the
two?
word. I don't like using the word disinformation. Okay, but it's. I know that's more accurate to say. I just don't want to. As I is if I've interviewed Lou twice, I'm trying to use nice words. I'm saying he may have a job that he has to do. Okay, that's all I'm saying, and it has to be secret. Okay,
Oh yeah. Well, I also have to
you know.
question myself sometimes because I worry at times that I'm being manipulated to meet a end goal that I'm not aware of, and I'm willingly participating in something that is a net negative to humanity, which I want this to be something that brings humanity together, this topic, but I'm always in the back of my mind questioning, like, is this something that I'm being used to accomplish some nefarious goal? So I always try to keep that in the back of my mind when I evaluate information in this topic, just because I don't want to, like, no one wants to look like a fool. I don't, for sure. So I'm always trying to keep that there.
I think Lou is one of those people that has the patience because he's an old counter intel guy. He's been in the jungles of Southeast Asia. he can take the criticism. When you've had bullets flying over your head, people throwing words at you seem minuscule. They don't seem to be that big, right? So there may be some point down the road, 10 years from now, where he has to say, "I'm sorry, this is a job I had to do."
I've thought that same thing too. If he has been tasked with
our country's better off for it. Our country's better off for it. That's just one little bullet point on my list of possibilities
on the decision tree. Yeah, you gotta explore them all.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is you can sort of use Occam's razor to help. You can say, what's easier? Spaceship traveled 50 light years to get here, or is it our own technology that we just, because I remember when they rolled out the B-1 bomber, the stealth bomber, I started thinking, well, cool, every few years now we're going to see some really high-tech stuff, right? No. What have we seen? So what? We've seen X-35 or whatever, F-22s, F-35s. Those are just fancy fighter jets.
The most fascinating one I've seen recently is the scaled down space shuttle that they send out into orbit, and they don't tell anybody what it does.
Like the X-37B, X-37B. That was actually going to be. That's one of the examples I used with Rather in my last interview. That's what I said. It looks like a scaled down space shuttle,
and no one knows what its mission is. No one knows. I know,
but it's not very impressive looking.
No,
right? It's not hovering. It's not floating there when they service it. It's got landing gear, so we know it's not defying gravity. Well, not in the picture. So, I don't know. I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole too far.
Well, you did mention Occam's razor, and I think I can shoehorn us back into the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis.
There we go. Sorry.
So Occam's razor is basically going to say that it's too difficult to travel across the galaxies to get to Earth, to just go sightseeing, grab a few cows, and head back. So the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, which is very similar to the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, which both have the word terrestrial in them. So that means they are basically of earthly origin. They could have come here a long time ago and set up a community and be established before humanity came into existence. And they could have been confused with basically the gods of our past. Additionally, they could have been a branch off of the human tree, excuse me, that is similar to like the Denisovans or the Neanderthals, which are actually so genetically close to us that we have their DNA in ours. If you're Asian, you do have some Denisovan DNA. If you're European, you have some Neanderthal DNA in you. So there is a pot. So
I've had a DNA test.
There's a few different flavors of possible explanations of what an ultra-terrestrial is. And it would basically be something that is here already. There is no need to travel light years to get here. So it checks that box. It eliminates that as a possibility. The overtones, the reproductive overtones associated with abductions don't make sense if you are a creature from another solar system. Your DNA is not going to be compatible with ours. But if you're from Earth, you have share a lot of similar DNA with us. If you are a branch of humanity, you share even more. So it would make more sense for there to be a reproductive aspect of abductions if you are from Earth instead of if you are an extraterrestrial. That just wouldn't be compatible. So that's another reason why Occam Razor points towards the crypto or ultra-terrestrial hypothesis as the more easier to accept possibility. There's less leaps of technology that you have to take, like time travel. That's a possibility. That's probably an easier possibility, in my opinion, than traveling from the images that we saw on the James Webb telescope.
Yeah. I mean, I think the term time travel is misused a lot, but anyway, that's another rabbit hole to go down. In other words,
Terrestrial, I think is what they call it now.
Yeah, but I see. It's funny too because I also have a hierarchy, a bullet list when it comes to spirituality because obviously I was brought up in the Bible Belt in a Southern Baptist church, and I was taught, Christianity, Southern Baptist Christianity, right? So Jesus is up here on the top of the list, and then right under it is that theory where the next possibility is that we were probably, if we weren't if our DNA wasn't manipulated at some point to be a crossover from Neanderthal or whatever, then that means they would have either have already been here, they would have been here before, or they are here. We just aren't aware. We can't see them, and I guess that's what ties into my little theory of maybe when we were created, our hardware wasn't. It would have been easy. It's like I gave rather this example. I keep forgetting to bring my camera out, but I've got the full spectrum camera where all they do is remove the IR filter from the inside of the face of the sensor, and it becomes a full spectrum camera all of a sudden. Maybe our hardware, maybe our eyes, our optic system, our brains were just created to filter out them, and they're just here. They're all around us, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's another. Again, people say, "Well, that's crazy." Well, I'm not making that claim. I'm saying that's a little bullet point on my list of possibilities.
Well, have you heard that people used to not have the ability to see blue? Like that has been discussed ad nauseum.
I've heard that, but I didn't. I don't understand what. I think.
I didn't either until I did a little bit of looking into it, but I'm not going to be able to explain it thoroughly.
Right, but my point there is, and you being a mechanical engineer might agree with this, that just may be something that we had to train our brains to do, right? Or that maybe there wasn't a lot of blue around at one time. But I'm saying, but there was no change that had to be made for us to be able to see blue, right?
Correct.
I'm saying that it may be that we were created so that we could not see the same spectrum. There's maybe a different spectrum that even in light, maybe, or maybe it's that dark matter or something that doesn't interact with light the same way.
So maybe they also have the ability to do like noise canceling headphones where they change the way that maybe they just exude a light spectrum that cancels out what we're able to see. So that's one of the reasons I like this topic is because you can just let your mind run wild. And I like that. Like I was a borderline insomniac for most of my life. So I spent a lot of time up in the middle of the night just thinking about stuff. And this was a topic that you can just go wild with, just wherever you want to take it, it'll go.
Yeah, all of those to me are more likely, like the fact that we've had physical, that we were. See, even though I was born in the church, even if I wasn't, I still would have. I read so many books about, and this was back in the 70s and 80s. There were books by doctors and scientists saying that life is too complex. Right, you can find those books today. I can't remember the authors, but life is too complex to have just been an accident, right? So I like to think that it was designed and built. I like to think that the universe was designed and built because I'm a design build contractor.
Yeah,
And I like that
I
concept.
noticed that.
So I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible that um, we were created in a manner that would allow. If I was going to build a robot, I wouldn't build it. So this is why I think it's funny that humans are afraid of robots. If I was going to build a robot, I would make sure that I had always had the ability to turn it off. That it wasn't going to be smarter than me, and it wasn't going to be able to take me. You know what I mean? And I think that's the same thing. These beings, or God, wouldn't have created beings that could become more powerful or smarter or more intelligent or whatever, right? We would have limited abilities, right? Uh, Even at the peak of our evolution, which to me, I feel like we've already peaked and we're headed for extinction.
All right, when did we peak? Like, do you know? Like, do you have a year
I'm
in
thinking
mind?
maybe the moon landing probably.
I was thinking 1964. That was the biggest year in humanity's history, in my opinion. The best car, the 64 Impala, was built
Yeah.
in. The Beatles came to the United States. There's just so many amazing things happened in 64.
So that's better than 69. I like that. For some reason, the moon landing just pops out in my head,
Although the Camaros were around in 69 and they weren't in 64. So it has that going for it.
I was going to say 62. That was the year I was born, but that would be kind of,
You're a little biased.
That's when the 62 Corvair was made too, which was my first car. But it's kind of funny. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing. And so people, if you were to take out 2 or 3 minutes of our interview, you might think that I'm some kind of skeptic or something because I'm anxious to see evidence, and I expect, especially people in of science like Hal Puthoff, and one of the people I respect the most is Avi Loeb, right? He's not going to say anything that he can't produce a white paper on, or research, right? He's just straight down the road science. If I'm going to produce a hypothesis, I'm going to start doing experiments right away, right? And I'm going to share that research so that it can be tested by other scientists. And at some point, there will be a consensus, right? That's all I'm asking for.
So Gary Nolan has jumped to the very top of my favorite UFO personalities list just recently. And a lot of it has to do with just him being so verbal on Twitter to people, to encouraging people to think for themselves instead of saying, why are you discouraging people from even asking these questions and looking into these different avenues? Why don't you encourage them to do it? That is how we learn, is by questioning things and digging into. We're gonna go down, like, I learn more from failures than I do from successes. So that's what humanity needs to continue to do to advance, is we need to investigate things that are going to be fruitless. You don't want to do that going into it, but you want to explore, and if it doesn't pan out, you eliminate it and you go on to the next thing. So that's what I like about Gary Nolan's approach, is he is encouraging investigation instead of reinforcing stigma associated with even investigating this topic. It needs to be taken seriously.
The only thing is that I formed a little bit of I don't know what didn't he make a claim? Isn't he one of the? I didn't mean to put him in that category earlier, where I was saying that he, he's making statements without any evidence or any research or anything to back it up. It's, in other words, some of these people are stating things as if they've seen them, but they won't tell you they've seen. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I'm an insider.
Cloak and dagger, very cloak and dagger.
I'm an insider. I know things, and to me, I would just wish they would just wait until. I think it's, as a scientist, I think it's unprofessional to do that. That's all I'm saying. when Avi Loeb, when he discovers something, he writes about it, and he makes his argument. It's like a muamua. That was a fascinating. I mean, look at the job he did with that, right? Very convincing. You know, he didn't just get on a podcast and say, "Oh, I think it's a probe from another galaxy." He he's got work behind it, and so that's
Mhm.
why I expect people like Gary Nolan to do the same thing. You know,
So
but
even if Gary Nolan did do the same thing, I wouldn't be able to understand the data that he presents. Man, that
oh,
guy's
you
on a
could.
different level.
I think you could. You're an engineer. You could. I'm pretty sure.
I'm bad with people. He's good with people. They're at least their body parts.
I was just for some reason I've never been a person to put. I don't think this may be my early raising. I was always taught not to put any one human on a pedestal, right? So Gary Nolan's just another guy to me. You know, I
And
I
I
know.
agree with that, but he's a
Yeah.
subject matter expert in something that I am far from a
No, I know.
novice at.
Even Avi, even as highly as I speak with Avi about Avi, he's just still another scientist who's doing a good job. I just think he's doing a good job. I'm not saying he's you know Lord and Savior of science. I'm just
So,
saying,
and those are the guys that I think this community needs to give it some form of credibility and
yeah,
just
that's
an
true.
air of, hey, we're not just a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing nut jobs, which is the way that we've been painted for decades, unfortunately.
I think my mother used to tell me this though when I was little, or as I guess maybe as I was growing older, like a 10 or 11 or something. She would say, what is it to much is given, much is expected, or something? What's that old saying?
I think you
Well,
nailed it. I think that's it.
and I think that if people like Avi and Gary and Hal Puthoff, all those people that have been gifted with knowledge, with the ability to absorb and think logically, you know what I mean? Those people, I hold them to a higher standard. So if they're going to make claims, I really just want something else besides I them telling us that we've had disclosure and just believe me without,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It, so I'm not trying to be critical. I just have this feeling that maybe there was Lou and those guys had a job to do, they did it, and now maybe they're trying to say we've had disclosure, everything's cool, just we'll let you know, just go back to sleep and we'll tell you when it's time to wake up, we'll let you know. That is a that's a vibe I'm getting.
So let me ask you this question. If we continue to have congressional hearings, what type of information or what kind of evidence do you think they would have to present? Because the only thing I've heard them talking about is witness or what it's called immunity for whistleblower testimony. To me, that's still not proof. That's still not enough. Like, what is it that needs to come out of a congressional
I don't
hearing
I don't think
that would give you proof?
I've made people mad at me about this too. I'm surprised I haven't gotten kicked off UFO Twitter. Um, I don't think the congressional hearings are going to yield anything unclassified. I think that that's again is a measure to make citizens feel like they're being involved by their elected representatives taking action. But I don't expect anything of concrete to come out of it.
I think all the good stuff is going to be in the classified version of those
Yeah,
hearings.
we
But
won't hear. It'll be just like 30, 40 years ago when they had congressional hearings and everything, pretty much everything cool was classified. you know,
what I think the end goal, or maybe not the end goal, the end result of those hearings is going to be is an increased appetite by the general public to get more answers and more disclosure from the government about what they know about this topic. That's what I think the product of congressional hearings is going to be, is a overwhelming push by the population to demand answers and start getting information out.
I always, every time I hear that, I have to remind myself that the community is really pretty small.
Oh yeah, we're terribly small.
I mean, if you added up all the views on the YouTube channels that are actually, UFO channels, they probably wouldn't add up to be one decent sized YouTuber, normal YouTuber, and I've actually done that. I've actually gone around and looked at like 10 different channels, and they got 10,000 subscribers, 5,000 subscribers, 2,500 subscribers, and their views are all, 100,000, 300,000, 400. So if you added all that accumulative, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't really think 90% of the general population really even cares or wants to know. Because
I agree with that. My wife's one of them. Unless it has something unless it impacts her day-to-day life, she's not really too interested in it. But she's the same person that will watch makeup videos just about every day on how to do things. So it's all on what you're looking for. But I think that at some point there will be a tipping point. And I think this is something that Richard Dolan has spoken about, where there will be a tidal wave of attention given to this subject at some point in the future. I don't know what that point would be, what it would take to get people interested in it. But at some point, I think there will be no putting the toothpaste back in the tube to still another Richard Dolan quote.
Here's a problem I have with all of it, honestly, is that if these beings wanted us to know, we would already know. I don't think humans are in control of it.
All right, so that leads back into crypto-terrestrial territory.
If they exist, I believe they do. I don't think they do. I believe they do. See, I try to distinguish between those two, because I have no evidence, so I have to believe it, right? I can't think it unless I can come up with an explanation for it. Well, without evidence, but so then I go to the next point in that is that if they are there, why don't they just they don't President Joe Biden's not their boss. They could just roll out tomorrow, right? They're not for some reason, and it may be that they don't want to, So that leads back to think of it this way: if it is our technology and the videos that we're seeing are our own troops training, against other countries' technology that's similar. Because one of the first things I thought of when, the splash video.
Yeah.
The first thing I said to myself was, why is this radar operator and the scope operator acting as if they're watching a training mission? They're like, okay, here it comes. It's getting closer to the water, splash, splash, mark. It's like, you know what I mean? There's no, oh my God, it's there's no, and I know they're trained professionals, right? I'm just saying I get vibes from the universe. The vibe I got from that is that it might not, it might be our own technology. It would be cool if it wasn't, but
yeah.
And I forgot where I was going with this.
Well, I'll get us back on track. I think I can get us back on track.
I'm so glad you're here because
so you mentioned like why don't they make themselves known? Well, in the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis that's put forward by Matt Tonys, he is basically saying that we could potentially have a symbiotic relationship with these entities that we're more or less unaware of. And if we did find out about this relationship that we have with them, we wouldn't like it very much. And so they have a vested interest in stealth, that they have a vested interest in keeping their presence unknown to us. So what if they live in the oceans, if they live in the cave systems, if they live somewhere in a cordoned off section of the globe, the best way for them to avoid us finding them is to say, hey, look, we're from space. Look up. Don't look down. Don't look over in these oceans that make up 70% of the Earth that you're on. Look up.
That's kind of where I was coming from when I was saying the number 2 bullet point below Jesus, where they've been here all along. We don't have the hardware to.
And if they're this
Yeah.
advanced, then we're going to have a hard time keeping up with them. Obviously, like it's.
See, I don't think we. I think what we're going to find out is that we don't have to keep up with them. There's no way to keep up with them. We weren't created with the ability. Just like if I was talking about building that robot, I'm not going to create the robot so that it can take over my reality, right? I don't think we were created with the ability to be a threat to them, right? Why would you why would you grow food in your garden that was going to poison you? You
All right,
wouldn't do that.
so let me get your take on why do you think that there is a bunch of warnings about nuclear proliferation as well as deterioration of our environment that we live on? Like, why do you think that would be a reoccurring theme in communication with
It's
these
a theme.
entities?
I'll say that. It's a theme among humans. Yeah. I agree it's a theme among, but why would it, I mean, I get it. Okay. And maybe they're turning off that would be a nice thought actually, but they didn't stop us from nuking, Hiroshima and
Correct.
Nagasaki. So, and also creating fallout all over the United States in the 50s, so.
Or in the Bikini Atolls, like those places were
Those places are
ringing.
wasted. Yeah, you don't want to go there for vacation. But yeah, I don't know. I keep hearing, I hear that, and I hear what's his name's Bob Salas,
Robert Salas, the Robert Salas show.
Yeah, but I don't think he's lying. I'm not saying he's not telling the truth. I'm just saying I understand the stories and I understand where that could come from. But again, I'm not going to create that robot I create is not going to be able to build a weapon to destroy me. I'm not going to put that. I'm not going to instill that intelligence into it.
So what you're hitting on is the most difficult part of this entire phenomenon for me to understand and comprehend is just witness testimony. Like, it's hard for me to listen to someone say something, that an experience that they had, and just believe it. Like, I just have a hard time believing all the stories, but there's so many of them that there's got to be truth underlying some of them. Or what it is, I don't know, but there's so many.
I don't talk about my little case too much because I don't want people to think I'm making a claim. Okay. But it affects your psyche. Okay. Like I've had these particular dreams ever since my entire life, right? Reoccurring type things. And it's themes. It's not the exact same thing. I never had that before, right? But that's my own personal experience, right? I don't know that that's not just some sort of post-traumatic stress thing that I'm creating in my mind before I go to sleep. And I've talked to Alexei Novitsky about this. He's I don't know if you've seen any of our videos, but at 2:30 in the morning, it's almost like clockwork. I have this same event, and I'll wake up, and after talking with him and about his theory on, he's got his own theory of everything. You just have to go again. It's one of those things you can't talk about without a 12-hour talk, But now, if I told you about those, what would you think? I mean, would you think those are real, or would you think that's just my own personal experience? It is my own
takeaway.
Yeah.
My takeaway is, without having had an experience myself, I don't have the necessary tools to accurately absorb that information. I feel like that's something that, like you said, it's stayed with you. Something has stayed with you that I don't have. So that's where it's going to be difficult for me to fully appreciate and understand the situations that someone else has been through if I haven't been through. It's the same thing with any childhood trauma. If you've been through it, you understand what other people are going through. I feel like it's the same way with the UFO phenomena or any of the paranormal stuff. Like, if you've gone through it, you understand it. And I don't understand. I haven't, so I don't understand it at the same level.
And see, I don't put myself above you because you haven't had an experience. I'm on the same level as you. because I have the same. Well, your brain may be better than mine. But I mean, we're still both equal, and we're both humans. And I've just everything that I could be experiencing could be chemistry in my brain. Which, I mean, I'm pretty sure I've actually set up cameras to help myself convince myself now of that, and it's gotten a little better. But I'm pretty sure I lost a wife over this, and it was
I'm
pretty.
sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. I mean, everything's cool. It's fine. We're still friends. But it was very. It's taken many years. You know. But again, I'm not going to use that as evidence to try to convince other people that there's some phenomenon. I mean, I'm just. I don't. I want. If there, I don't think there are beings involved with that. It may have been the first experience was, but now this is some sort of post traumatic thing. But if I'm going to convince someone of that, I want to have video. I want to have not a video is probably not even.
No, no.
Technology has come so far that you can pretty much just create. Uh, Look at Billy Meyer back in the '70s. I don't know if you're familiar with his story,
The
but
lampshades or lamps, I
yeah, the
guess.
garbage can lids and all this kind of stuff. He had many people convinced, but so it's almost like, and you see, my history is very deep and long, so I take words differently. So when Lou Elizondo said, "We wake up, we've already had disclosure," that meant something different to me than it did than somebody who was born in the year 2000, right? Who was
Yeah.
17 in 2017 and who thought, "Oh, this is cool. We know now." And I'm like, "What do we know?" Well, I don't know, but we know. I'm like, "That's not knowing."
Well,
you know.
I'm a mechanical engineer, so what I was first drawn to about the whole phenomenon was the nuts and bolts aspects of the crafts. To me, that's what I want. I want to see a actual physical craft that blows my mind. I mean, that has performance characteristics that are not within the realm of our known physics. And I know that we can do some amazing stuff that we haven't seen yet, but I feel like there's going to be a definite instantaneous acceleration is the thing that I want to see. Right angle turns, that sounds phenomenal. Those are the things that I want to see. The craft itself. But what has changed in the last 5 years, I'd say since 2017, has been the tie into the consciousness aspect of it. And I'm not prepared for that aspect of the phenomenon because my mind has never been wired that way. I'm a very logical thinker. And when it comes to consciousness having something to do with it, I am starting from scratch, just like everybody else. So I don't know how to comprehend that aspect of the phenomenon.
I personally think the consciousness side of it is going back to how we were created. It may be that our consciousness was just one little tool that we were given to maybe, at some point develop a way to as a conduit, for communication, with the beings or whatever it is, right? So maybe it's like a USB port. Maybe our consciousness is like a USB port. My 3D printer, I have to put, the G code on there, and I have to take it over to the 3D printer and plug it in.
A universal computer code, I guess, for
Yeah.
a
Well,
programming
maybe
code.
our consciousness is like a USB port where if we're trained or we understand, and like just for example, I had to quit. For many years I had this deep desire to understand meditation, right? Because I was studying the gurus and Jainism, and my mother was this world traveler, and she got me interested in all the different religions and Hinduism and Buddhism, and I thought meditation was the thing. And while all these women were doing yoga, right, for exercise, I realized that it was meant for a spiritual purpose, not exercise, and and what happened to me was, I think, now this sounds crazy, okay? And I don't know if I've ever said this before. Sorry, I've got beard hair in my mouth. Um, it may be that through meditation, if you can achieve a certain level, that it opens that conduit up that I'm talking about. Are you able to connect to your?
I feel like you're describing CE5.
No, not really, but I know what you're saying. Maybe. Uh, I don't believe. I mean, for me, when you make that connection, it's going to be more of a. It's not going to be something physical in the sky, right? You're basically during meditation, you have to be sort of wired in to it, right? And you can't do that. You can't do it at the conscious level that people are experiencing CE5. I personally don't think so. I think when I was having my worst events at night, it was after, and I don't do this anymore. Never do deep meditation before you go to sleep. Don't do that. That if the deeper you get into meditation, the more you'll open yourself up to these types of events where you'll spring awake at 2:30 in the morning when you and there will be, you think it's something real, and you're able to move, you're not paralyzed, you're fully awake, and then for about 30 seconds, or really more like 3 seconds, right? Boom, it's over. Okay. And I can't describe it, and I don't want to really describe it. I'm just saying, from my point of view, that um, there is a way to use your consciousness as a tool, as a conduit, as a connection, but it's something that uh, probably takes um, a lot of practice, and you know, probably even some spiritual training, you know. But once you do it, it's almost like beware of what you ask for. You know,
I've always had a problem with racing thoughts, so I've never been able to get into meditation like I've tried, like I've hoped I could.
the hardest thing to do is to clear your mind.
Exactly.
That is the most difficult thing, and it almost takes a certain level of energy to just clear your mind before you can, you know, it's really kind of bizarre. But anyway, I really didn't mean to spend that much time on my experiences. I guess the only point I'm trying to make there is that I don't get on YouTube and say, I've had this experience, so I think you should believe this. I think you should think the way I do. And I've actually experienced that through different little subgroups on um, Discord and Twitter. And there's like, it's the tribal mentality where there's a tribe that says, this is the way you should think. This is what you should believe. This is the way it is. We've had disclosure. This is it. And that's kind of annoying to me, to be honest with you. But it's just.
Yeah, I'm of the line of thinking that nobody knows exactly what's going on, that this is a definable explanation that someone can present. Like, I feel like we're all, like I said, the James McDonald interview from the 1960s rings so true today. It makes me think this is something that might be above and beyond our human capability to understand and comprehend at this point. We could try, maybe there's some, I hope there's a physical creature that we could shake hands one day. That would be awesome. As long as there was no bad ramifications of it from doing that, of course. But I hope there is a physical aspect to this phenomenon, whatever it is. But I'm willing to accept that it's not. And I have no idea what it is. So let's just keep looking until we can get some answers.
What's funny though is that I think that there's always a possibility that it's both terrestrial and non-terrestrial. I think that it's possible that if we do have crashed craft, that maybe they're from off our planet, that and we're visiting, and maybe they weren't as advanced as some other civilization. They weren't. Maybe they didn't think our gravity was that strong or something.
Yeah.
And they got here and oops, we crash. Those don't have to be the same beings that we're dealing with on a daily basis.
Well, I think there's a broad range of different craft, like orbs, in my opinion, are different than triangles, or different than tic tacs, or different than saucers. Like, why there's so many different shapes, I don't know. It's like they just seem so distinct from each other in the way that they're described to move, the way that they look, the way that they operate. It just seems like we're dealing with different things. And something else that I've thought about is if there is like an interdimensional or extraterrestrial aspect to the phenomenon where you can travel across dimensions or time to get here. Well, if there's an advanced physical alien species somewhere that figures that out and says, hey, there's these interdimensional things, let's make some technology to utilize the loophole that these guys are using. Well, then ET could use interdimensional portals to get here. So it could be, instead of it being separate individual things, it could be a blend or a mixture of those things, basically being like, hey, we need to travel really far. Hey, let's use the interdimensional technology. Oh, we need to go back in time. Let's use the extraterrestrial technology to go back to 1964 and then see the cars and things like that. So it could be, I mean, we as humans, if we had access to those different types of technologies, we'd utilize them. Why wouldn't another advanced civilization somewhere else in the universe do the same thing?
And what's funny is it could be that the ultra or the crypto terrestrials are having to deal with those just like we are, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I also,
coming from another civilization, they may be like, hey, this is our planet. We created these goober humans,
I also keep the door open to us being the first advanced civilization in existence, or the last. I mean, or just there's a big gap in between.
I think the last is probably more. Well, I think we were created. So I think, Earth was a late bloomer in the universe, right? As far, well, the Earth wasn't even formed until like 10 billion years after the universe was formed, right? Or something like that. So if you think about those 10 billion years, what happened in that time scale, plenty enough time.
Well, I mean, think about what's happened in the last 120,000 years. There could have been several civilizations that rose and fell that we're unaware of, that are now under tectonic plates that well, I don't know if 120,000 years is enough for that, but that could just be wiped off the face of the earth by some ancient cataclysm that Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson talk about ad nauseum. So in a good way.
No, and I actually believe that's pretty easy.
Solid.
It's pretty solid, right? Because I mean, there's enough. I think there's enough. We could probably find enough archaeological, evidence for that kind of thing.
So that's another possible origin of ultra-terrestrials, is that they could be a pre-Diluvian civilization, advanced civilization that exists in smaller numbers and is genetically depleted. So they need to use our DNA to supplement theirs on occasion, and that they're advanced. They're the remnants of the civilization that's responsible for the myths associated with Atlantis, or advanced technologies from the past, and that we see in our carvings from Mesopotamia and Samaria. That's another possible origin of these ultra-terrestrials.
Well, I just think it may be that humans have been around, or some form of human have been around that long. In other words, these other beings have always, showed up maybe in the early stages of Earth's evolution, and as far back as we can even guess, they've been here, right? And they even created those early forms of human the Mesopotamians and the, all those early forms may have been. I think if they're going to be that advanced, they would be that, maybe they're millions of years old, right? The Earth's what, 4.5 billion? What is it, 4 billion years old?
I haven't looked at my calendar in a while.
So,
I don't know.
So the Earth, I think, is like 4.5. Somebody say it. They could have been here 2 billion years ago or 1 billion years ago, and maybe,
all right, you make a good point. So you're from Tennessee. How long does a Californian have to live in Tennessee before they become a Tennessean? It's the same thing with ET. How long before they become Earthlings?
It doesn't work.
Does it?
It's not.
They're
possible.
kids. They're kids.
Yeah. It would take many generations to convert them to Tennesseans.
Are you guys getting a bunch of Californians in your neck of the woods? I'm just going to derail this conversation altogether.
We're getting more people from like the Northeast. Like I actually, when I was buying my property out in the woods, I actually was competing with, like, I went through like 20 pieces of property, and it seemed like, because I was working with a realtor from this area. I'm way out in the sticks, okay? And every time I would go to look at a piece of property, the realtor, and this was when the real estate market was so hot. This was like 2 years ago, or when it was going. You could, if you didn't know a realtor that had the list of people, like you would have to know a realtor, and that realtor would have to basically give you the inside, skinny on that property before you could get a chance to even make an offer on it. And that's what happened on this property right here. I finally figured that out, and I finally went to a local guy who lives right down the road from me, but he has a big old 30-acre farm. He's also a realtor, and I said, "Look, I need a piece of property up here. I got to move out of this county that's crowded. There's too many people." He was like, "I'll find you something." And literally, he found me a piece of property that wasn't even on the market. So,
yeah, as soon as it hit, there were 3 offers on that first day.
No, it never hit because they accepted my offer. I made a cash offer, and they took it that night. It never literally went on the market. And so, anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, that rant, but you were asking me about people moving here, but he would tell me that somebody from New York bought that. I was like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah,
we can't have New Yorkers in the woods. What are they going to do?" And to this day, they still haven't moved. I actually had one of them call me coincidentally and wanted me to meet with them on their property. This was like 5 miles up the road, to design and build them a cabin. But that was a year ago, and they still haven't called back, and they still haven't built anything.
Yeah.
So some of them, and what's funny is the realtor also told me that some of the men would make offers. They would be really serious, and then they'd fly their wives down here from New York, and the women the wives would be afraid to live in the woods, and they would cancel the deal.
Yeah, so I believe it.
I thought that was kind of humorous.
I moved to Tennessee from Atlanta, so it was a culture shock when I was in 10th grade. So I moved from like inner city Atlanta to Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and it was just a culture shock for me. So I can imagine people coming from New York are thrust into a different world that they're not used to, and it can be overwhelming, I'm sure.
Do you know a YouTuber named Hickok45?
I can't say I'm familiar with him.
Okay.
Or her.
He's an older gentleman. He's got, I don't know, 50 million subscribers, and I've met him a few times. He lives up there at Mount Juliet, near that area, out kind of in the woods a little bit.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to spend so much time talking about property.
Real estate.
But
it's what's hot in Tennessee right now. Sorry, guys. We're from Tennessee.
I thought it was fascinating that all these people from out of state are moving, which I'm not against. It is interesting though.
Well, I think that a lot of it is you can move to Tennessee from California, which is what seems to be the predominant migration in my neck of the woods. And the 2-bedroom $1 million house you had in uh, California buys you like a 5-bedroom mansion here in Tennessee, and then you still have half of your money left. So it's crazy. And I think that's a lot of what has driven the prices up in this area, is because people are paying California prices for Tennessee houses. And that's supply and demand. They're willing to pay it. People are willing to sell it to them for that much.
Daniel Boone says Tennessee whiskey. What's funny is this realtor that I'm talking about, he's a backwoods guy. I hope he's not watching. Sorry, Travis. I love you, Travis. Okay, I'm not saying you're backwoods. We're all backwoods here, right? He also has a distillery license, so he can
Jack of all trades.
legally make moonshine. It's kind of funny. But Daniel was talking about, which I don't drink, so. But I just thought it was funny that he's a realtor, a farmer, and has a distillery.
He's diversified.
He's diversified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes he'll be driving his tractor down the road and he'll honk his horn. It's kind of funny. Well, we went all over the place.
I don't even know where we were.
I don't know where we left off. I liked how you're open though to different, for being different things, because it comes back to the point that nobody, I don't think, well, if somebody does actually know the answer, they could solve this whole mystery pretty quickly. And I guess that's the frustrating thing for me is that if those people who are claiming to know do know, there must be a reason they're not telling us.
So there, one of the forefathers of NASA, I think it was when it was called NACA. I think it was early 1952s. Paul R. Hill, he wrote a book called Unconventional Flying Objects. And he is, like I said, a forefather of the NASA organization. And he thinks that he has figured out how the UFOs are able to move in the way that they move without violating the laws of physics. I've got the book. I cannot comprehend the book. Once again, this is like so far over my head that it's difficult. But I actually made a quick little video on that one just to hope that I can get that book in front of somebody that has the intelligence to understand it and explain it.
Isn't the basic premise is that they're creating a sort of an anti-gravity bubble, a warp bubble around them? I still don't know.
I don't think that's what his explanation is, but like I said, I'm not going to be able to do it justice. I need somebody, some smart watcher to dig into that book and explain it to me, simplify it.
What's the other thing where you would have anti-gravity technology and then you would travel along they're not geodesic lines.
Ley lines.
Yeah. Which I really don't, those seem to be too arbitrary for me. I mean, I understand, the way gravity works. I understand that it's warping space, or it's, and it, that's what creates the, orbits of the planets. But I don't think there's like a grid that you can't see, and there's all these lines that are, in perfect, symmetry. I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
That's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how we wouldn't have all agreed that they exist if it was something that seems that tangible, that measurable, that scientific.
Well, and I've seen the other, these theories about, quantum physics where, through quantum entanglement, that the grid is basically made up of those points, those vectors of where the particles are entangled at a certain distance, and that forms a grid, and that's the structure underlying space-time. But
I hear about
that's the problem. Everybody has a theory.
I hear about the ley lines, and then they say, and they cross right over the Great Pyramids of Giza. And then I start digging into the Great Pyramids of Giza, and I never look at the ley lines again because the rock, the stone, is physical, visible information that you can take in, and incredible. Like all the ancient architecture, ancient megaliths is one of my giant passions. Like I love that stuff. It's such a amazing feat of humanity to see that stuff, how they were able to do it without gasoline engines, internal combustion engines. It's amazing.
And see, the Nazca lines are kind of fascinating to me, but I can still see how they could do it. I think that's something that's probably possible using, just using the stars for navigation, as far.
But can you explain like Sacsayhuman and all the megaliths over there that are fit together in such a strange, weird way?
When we lay out a house, I can just put a stake in the ground, right? And I can do the 6-8-10 rule, and I can get a corner, and then I can measure down those lines and mark another corner and then do 6-8. In other words, through math, through geometry, I can do things on the ground without a drawing, without technology. I could do the same thing with laying stones in a path, right, through geometry. So I can see how it could be done. It would take a person with a lot of vision to be able to draw a spider, with curved legs.
Oh, okay. The Nazca lines, in my opinion, aren't very. I don't want to say they're not impressive. They're impressive, but they're not technological feats.
That's what I'm talking about. I think those are possible. They could be, if Christopher Columbus can navigate to the New World just using a sextant, you could certainly lay out a spider monkey on the ground, even on a big scale.
I think those are pretty cool, but I think like if you see the megalithic architecture of Peru, the big megalithic 100-ton stones, those things, those are the ones to me that I can't explain. No one seems to be able to explain them. Some people say they're geopolymers. I have a hard time buying that. There's so many mysteries there.
Is it the Galapagos Islands where the big heads are?
Easter Island,
not the Galapagos. Yeah, I should have known that. Sorry. That I've actually there was a guy who discovered how they got those things stood up. Right.
All right. So I'll say he has a theory on how to do it. So that might not be how they did it though.
No, he actually demonstrates how they would how you could carve them in place, right? And then you could dig a pit, and you basically dig out from under the end of it, and it creates a fulcrum, and it basically stands itself up at some point, right? And then you just have to push it a little bit more to make it plumb or whatever. And then because if you look at them, there's about as much underground as they're sticking up out of the ground.
So I'll challenge you to go back and look at Brian Forrester's videos on Easter Island, because that's one explanation for one particular type of installation of those things. There's some that are on pedestals right next to each other. There's a giant row of them. There's a lot more there than it. I feel like if Mick West says, "Hey, look, I can replicate this video," that doesn't mean, well, that's what it is. Like, okay, you can figure out how to do that, but that doesn't mean that explains everything.
And I'm not trying to debunk anything. That's the difference. I'm just open to I'm just open to the ideas. In other words, as a builder, I can go. As a builder, I know why, like on a construction site, I know why stone gets in the shape of a pyramid, right? Because when we make piles of stone or gravel and you pile them in one spot, they naturally make a pyramid. a pile of rocks is in the shape of a pyramid. Stone just makes. So to me, it's not that amazing that the design of the Great Pyramids are in the shape of a pyramid, because if you just stack up a pile of stones, it's in kind of the shape of a pyramid, right? So somebody thought, oh, let's make a big stack of stones and let's make it have a purpose.
Yeah.
Let's give it cool shafts where we can look out and see the North Star or Polaris or whatever. So all I'm saying is I can imagine, I think if it didn't take much, it just took somebody with a little vision to do it. You know, a lot of those huge stones that are still, you got to admit, some of those are still laying where they left them, right? Some of those
In
100-ton,
situ, yeah.
yeah, and a lot of that stone is like soapstone or sandstone or is soft stone that you can easily, chisel, you know, and there's also, so I also hire stonemasons for projects, right? And I'm always asking them crazy questions like, "How would you do this?" And they would say, "Oh, they dig a trench along the stone first, right? They dig two trenches, and then they use tools to connect those trenches to make the stone flat, right? So there's techniques for making stone flat and smooth. You know, I'm not saying those stones were done that way. I'm saying that someone with an imagination could shape them. It might take. How long did it take? 100 years to build a pyramid?
Well, I mean, that's highly debated. Some people say 23 years. That seems crazy to me, but that's like a block every 2 minutes or something, I think was what the calculations work out to. But
Yeah,
there's so many examples around the world of advanced techniques used that are far and above than somebody sitting pounding a rock with another rock.
oh, I know. I'm not, and see, I'm not denying. I'm not doubting that. I'm just trying to imagine if I'm wrong. How was it done? In other words, I try to say, how could it have been done by a human, and then how what's the other side of the coin?
Oh yeah, I definitely think it's all
Yeah,
human done, but I think that we underestimate the um, genius that ancient man, I don't want to even call him ancient man, our forefathers had, and a way that they viewed the world and understood things that would blow our mind. Jim Vieira's videos on the Giants are the ones that catch my attention. Those things are awesome.
yeah. I think it's funny because when you're in an industry, you have a different perspective. You know, it's like I made a little video. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm doing a little series on a house we're building, from scratch, from start to finish or whatever. And I was sitting there. We dug this 20-foot deep hole, for a basement in a day. And I looked at my son Barrett, and I was like, we could go to Skinwalker Ranch and dig this hole, and we could find this underground spaceship. It would be so easy, you know. And of course, I made
Take it to Oak Island
mad.
first.
What's that?
Take it to Oak Island first.
What's at Oak Island? What
You
am I
don't
missing?
know Oak Island is its own TV series. It's the mystery of Oak Island. It is a hole that has been dug into the ground that has alternating layers of different types of wood and stone that were stacked up like 200 feet deep. They hit a certain level and it filled with salt water, so that they don't know what's at the bottom of this pit, and they've
Huh?
lost the location of the pit. It's
Sounds like
just
a
that
landfill.
it's on a island just off of Nova Scotia,
Hmm.
and they think Knights Templars are involved with it. There's just no one knows what's at the bottom of this pit. It's just another fascinating. Why would someone go to the effort to do what they did for shits
Now
and giggles?
people, humans 1,000 years from now are going to dig up our landfills and go, "What in the world? These
Yeah.
people, you know."
I've said the same thing to my wife. I'm like, no one's going to guess about us in the future because we just throw everything in a pile for them to find later. I mean, it's just, they can just root through everything.
Well, I guess my point is that when we dig up things now, we don't, again, it's perspective, right? We didn't live during that era, so we don't know why they did certain things,
Yeah.
you know, and so it may have been some sort of weird tradition to dig a hole and put wood and stone. I don't know. I guess my point is that sometimes we create scenarios just because, I don't know. Sometimes I think humans are bored with humanity and they just want something, they want to escape in their minds. And so these things are really fascinating. So they create, so it's easy to create scenarios around them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Well,
not,
I would encourage you to look into the Mystery of Oak Island, but not watch the TV series. Don't bother watching the TV series. You'll get bits and pieces of the story from it, but it's too much.
can you find it online? Because I don't have a TV. I don't really watch TV.
Oh, yeah. I'll actually try to find something for you and shoot you a link.
Oh, cool.
It's an interesting story, interesting thing.
Thank you, R&R. Peace to all who gather here. Yeah, a Skinwalker Ranch Sun Production Company. Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I see people think I'm not really a skeptic or a debunker. I just expect a lot out of I guess maybe I expect too much. I guess when I feel like it just, and I brought this up to Rather, and I got his take on it. But I remember when I was taking a lot of crap from people about my opinion of Skinwalker Ranch. They said, "Well, you haven't watched." I said, "Well, yes, I have, but I'll go back and watch it again." And I got these like 20 pages of notes the next time I went, because I wasn't taking notes. I've got these pages of notes, and if you read through them, you'll see a common theme, and the theme is we want to dig, but we can't. But you could if you wanted to. I mean, I'm saying there's this sort of there's these characters at Skinwalker Ranch. Some of them are saying we want to dig, like Travis. There's this character that's saying we want to dig to find the answer, and the other characters in the story are saying no, we can't dig. So it's that sort of it's that, what's the word? It's kayfabe. I had to look it up again. It's a script, and there's a story, and it's a drama, and there's there's a little bit of tension on the, because if you go back and watch, what's his name, Dragon, whatever his name is, he has we just can't dig, we just can't do it. I'm thinking, you're a security guard. What do you care if they dig a hole on this ranch or not? What is it? That's his character is supposed. You see what I mean? To me, it's very obvious that there's a script. And people get mad at me when I say this. I got kicked off a Discord server for talking about this stuff, which is cool because I don't need to be spending time on Discord. But you see, oh, and I said, let me and my crew go out there with an excavator. I'll dig a big enough hole, find whatever you think it is, and I'll show you. It's probably just a bed of rock. And that's what I'm going to think until you stop, pretending that you can't dig this hole for some reason. I'm expecting you to show me that if you're going to state there's a spaceship underground, you're going to have to dig it up and show me.
Yeah.
And that makes people mad. The fans of the show are upset about stuff like that. So I don't know what you think. I know we've been on for a long time. I didn't know if you had a quick.
I've got to put kids to bed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start going down a new rabbit hole, but maybe I can have you back sometime and we can talk about stuff like that, because I think it's.
Hey, we're not too far away. Maybe we do it in person at some point.
Yeah.
We'll go down to Chickamauga and explore the battlefield together, and then have a chat about it or something.
I was curious about what software you use for your drawing. Do you use AutoCAD or Revit or
for my drawings?
Yeah, for your mechanical.
For the most part, with what I do, I use PowerPoint, because a lot of what I do is annotation of actual pictures and finding flaws in other people's designs. So I'm not a design engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer that runs. I'm a facility engineer.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out because I find it interesting. I got a little poll going in my head as to what software different.
But I'm comfortable using AutoCAD to do some low level design work, but I'm not a draftsman by any chance.
Yeah, I'm curious what architects and engineers are using now.
Revit seems to be what's running away with it.
Yeah, about 15 years ago, I was sent a beta version of, was it 50, almost 20 years ago, a beta version of Revit, and I was like, oh my god, AutoCAD is a goner. Well, it's an AutoCAD product, but it's an Autodesk product. But I thought when I saw it, I was like, this is BIM. This has got BIM written all over it, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm just sorry. I didn't mean to bring that up at the last minute. I'm doing.
No worries.
I always like to find. I got several people online that I get extensions from. A couple of architects and engineers who let me use their extensions for SketchUp, which is what I use now. And I just think it's interesting that they've converted to SketchUp. I find that interesting that they can get by with doing that. But anyway, I didn't mean to talk about something boring to the public, but I just wanted to ask you that before you got going.
No, it's. I'm sure one person watching probably found that entertaining. So hey, thanks for watching.
Yeah, I screwed up the whole interview talking about Revit, but anyway, well, thank you. I appreciate it, and yeah,
thanks for having me on, Tony.
It was interesting to me. That's all that counts. Sorry, public. Sorry, general public. This is my show. People I find interesting. And we've come to the end of PiFi number 59. It's hard to believe. It's been 58 before this. But so thank you, Dan, and I will be talking to you soon.
All right. I'll see you on Twitter for sure. Take care.
All right. You too. See you.
See ya.
Bye. All right. That was awesome. Didn't mean to make it boring there at the end. It's just that I don't get to talk to too many different professionals, across the country. So when I do, I like to take a little poll of the software and stuff they're using because I'm curious what the trends are. I'm sure I can research it, but it's more interesting talking to people about it. But thank you all for taking on this task of listening to me talk with Dan. Dan's cool. I like him because he's a smart guy, and it's just interesting hearing. It's interesting to me seeing people in my industry kind of putting themselves out there because you don't see the junk I take. I'll go on a construction site and people will be like, they'll make fun, they'll make jokes, and they're just having fun. But there's that underlying ribbing, there's that underlying, faux pas associated. It's never, hey Tony, can you help me understand this, or can you, it's always the probing jokes and the, how construction workers are. It's kind of funny, but anyway. I'm rambling, and I appreciate everybody watching, and we'll see you. Oh, I've got Anjali Saturday. Anjali is on Saturday. I don't know exactly what time, but I'm going to work on the intro for that tomorrow. So I'll put it up, and so I appreciate everybody in the chat showing up. It's a fun. Sorry, I'll try to include comments better from now on. It's hard to keep my train of thought, and sometimes, but I appreciate it, guys, and we will see you then.